So there's a new documentary coming out on Shudder in just a few days, and it's about Dario Argento. And neither of us had seen any Dario Argento movies, so we just watched a bunch just to prepare for that, and we're going to talk about them in 1 second.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
I'm a OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my G boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another iPopcorn for that review. I'm Chris.
I'm Nick.
I guess this isn't really a review this time, but but today we're talking about Dario Argento movies writ large. And like I said, neither of us had seen any before. He is sort of like known as kind of the pioneer of this giallo film movement in Italy, which I'm kind of just learning about in real time. But they seem to be almost entirely these murder mystery type movies with a certain kind of flavor to them. So I want to let you start because you saw the earliest one, which is not the earliest giallo movie ever made, but it's the earliest.
It's his like
Dario Argento
directed movie, at least, because he looked like he's written quite a few movies, which were like war stories maybe before he got into this kind of genre. Yeah, and it's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which I wanted to watch just basically based off of the name. Thought it was a cool name, and I didn't watch this one as my first Dario Argento movie. I watched Deep Red first. I will say all of his movies have great practical effects, and the music on them is all great. The shots he uses are pretty fantastic. Like there's lots of hard cuts, there's just a plethora of different types of shots that he uses. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage is kind of like a murder mystery, similar to Deep Red. We'll kind of get into this, but you know, there's this American guy who's been living in, I believe Crystal Plumage takes place in Rome. I could be wrong about that.
Probably, yeah.
But he's a writer who's been living there, writing about birds, I think, and he's supposed to go back to America in like a day or two. And as he's walking home one night, he like looks into this gallery and sees a girl being assaulted by somebody wearing a trench coat and a hat. Runs over there to try to help. The guy gets away, and it's kind of like in Deep Red as well. It's just a normal guy gets into this weird, crazy situation where he sees somebody get murdered or almost murdered, and then he kind of becomes like somehow one of the lead investigative forces, even though he's not a cop whatsoever.
Yeah, some of these movies have that in common, especially Deep Red, like you said, where it's like, how does this guy, like, how is police work handled out here? Because
Yeah.
you're just letting this guy do a lot of the work for you.
And I kind of want to get into like just comparing these two movies, because you did just watch Deep Red, so does that sound familiar to you at all, like the plot line that I've described so far?
For sure, yeah. I mean, there is very much a common thread with all of these movies. Not to the point where I think it's like, I didn't get sick of watching them, but there is so much that they have in common where you do really celebrate the differences in them, because all of them have this like leather gloved, you don't know who it is, and you see things from the angle of their eyes or from the angle of the knife or from the angle of, but you're never seeing who they are, and you keep almost finding out who they are. And then there's always a twist, like maybe it's not exactly who you expected it to be, or you think you find out who it is. A couple of them have this in common, where you think you find out who it is and it's not that person actually, or maybe it was them for part of it or whatever. So there's complications that get thrown in all throughout here. But there's always the guy that gets thrown into this, just in every man that gets thrown into this. There's always a lot of pretty ladies. Well, I would say that I guess Suspiria doesn't have the male lead, really. You know what I mean? Our lead through that is more like your typical final girl type.
And see,
situation.
I feel like I haven't seen all of his movies, but I've seen a few of them now, and I feel like he definitely has like two different types of styles. So he's got like the murder mystery, like giallo, Bird with Crystal Plumage, Deep Red, and I think opera probably are, and then also like he's got like this magical, mystical side, which is Suspiria, the one I just watched today, Inferno, and Phenomena. And then I guess the one that came out in 2007, which was just the three mothers.
Yeah, so he doesn't always, and I could see somebody liking one of those sides of his directing style more than the other. Like, if you don't like the supernatural angle, there's certain ones of these you are not going to want to bother with. And if you do like that supernatural angle and don't like it to be super grounded and realistic and gritty, almost, because this genre, from this little sampling I've taken of it, it's a kind of a weird moment in history because it's like right, it's certainly after like all the old detective noir, black and white, like 30s, 40s movies, and it's even after like the George A. Romero splatter stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not quite to slashers yet, really. Like
Yeah, I feel
slashers
like
really start with like Halloween.
I feel like they probably took reference from his movies and stuff because he got really gory with his stuff, especially like Deep Red.
I could see a lot of people. I don't know how easy these were to see in the U.S. at the time that they were released or whatever, but I could see people being really shocked. A 1978, 1980 audience seeing, or 77, 75 audience seeing some of the stuff on here would be pretty shocking because you have to forgive a lot for sure, but the practical effects are effective if you can just turn off that part of your brain where you're like you remind yourself that they're how limited they are in the 70s with what they can do. There is some stuff, the Bat and Suspiria and stuff like that that's a little bit like you kind of have to laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
But still, like, there's some really shocking stuff here for sure that we can get into in a minute. But and I can see this inspiring a lot of stuff, but I know it inspired things like immediately after, relatively speaking, immediately after it. Like, there's things that Wes Craven took for the first Halloween. So, there's definitely influences here that have spanned and are still kind of reverberating through horror right now, I think.
Yeah, I could kind of see maybe like the first person shot of the killer, Wes Craven taking that because he does a good job of that, of like the killer walking around with a weapon or something. So I wanted to get back into a little bit of the similarities between these two movies, and I'll say something about the movies, and you can tell me what you think because you didn't watch Crystal Plumage. So basically, it's the guy, trying to solve the mystery, saw something crazy happening, going through all these things. There's a painting, right? That involves something, and there's seemingly two killers. But no, there's really just one, and another one's kind of looking after them. What movie am I describing?
Both.
Yes. Yeah, so
sure.
they both have that thing. So, like, Deep Red, there's going to be spoilers. It starts with, like, a child witnessing a murder, presumably, you think. And then the guy, as he's investigating, finds out all this stuff, and then finds a painting on a wall in a room that a kid drew of somebody getting stabbed. Come to find out, the mom that you meet earlier in the movie of this character, Carlo, she just broke one day and killed her husband.
Well, no, he was going to send her back to the insane asylum.
That's right. So that's right. So in both of these movies, both of the killers are women, and they had both spent some time in an insane asylum. In Crystal Plumage, there's a painting, a woman, it triggers her after she buys it because she was assaulted by this person and almost killed. But when she sees the painting, apparently it flips in her mind, and she was the person that was doing the killing, and so she starts killing all these people. The movies are good. Like, they're just super similar plot lines, especially down to the fact, like, in Crystal Plumage, the husband tries to be like, oh, I'm the killer, I did it, and then he ends up dying, and he's trying to protect her, and it's the same thing in Deep Red. The son's kind of like, oh, no, I did it, I'm the killer, and then, no, it's the woman in both instances.
In Tenebrae, which I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but Tenebrae was like a later film of his, and it's sort of around the time that Giallo films are kind of waning in popularity, and so this didn't have a huge reception at the time. It's been kind of reappraised in the modern lens, and people appreciate it now, but I don't think for me, this was the weakest of the bunch. I think that I saw Tenebrae, but in that one, you've got another like fake out where it's like, we think we found out who it is. There's like this reporter that's very curious about this guy's writing. It centers around an author who's in Italy, like promoting this most recent book, and he's like a murder mystery author, and someone kills someone and sends a message that he's the inspiration for their killings. His books are the inspiration for their killings. And there's a reporter or journalist or something that's like extra enthusiastically interested in this author's work, and you think you find out that that's who it is, and then you watch him get axe murdered, and then it turns out like he was the killer, but now somehow we've reignited the bloodlust in the author that was the protagonist of the movie the whole time. So he's the one that killed it's a whole thing. But that was the weakest one to me. But the point is, there's a lot of these like fake out things, and I think I'm interested to see if I ever like dip my toe back into Giallo outside of Dario Argento. I wonder how much of this is Dario Argento or how much of it is like Giallo, because I've seen clips of
Yeah.
other Giallo movies that aren't him that have like mosaics that are being revealed on the wall and like photos, like. So
Yeah, just
I feel
similar
like
things.
I feel like there's themes here that are beyond just Argento, but
It could be, yeah. Because I
but yeah,
definitely like the way, like, he gives you little bits that you don't really know who it is, and you're wondering, like,
mhm.
in Deep Red, it kind of, like, one of the big things is it shows the killer putting on this dark eyeliner around their eyes, and there's, like, 3 or 4 characters that have the same thing. And
Mhm.
being the mother, I don't know why I didn't pay attention to her eyes at all, but there's,
Yeah.
like, the reporter, you're kind of like, ah, that could be, she's a little strange, could be her.
Hmm.
And then crystal plumage, they kind of like talk about this. They find the glove and there's cigar ash on it from specifically Havanas, and you see like a guy smoking cigars. Like, oh, it could be him.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is these all do. I think that is one thing that's like a defining characteristic of these movies is that they all do center around some ultimate mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of really unusual thing happens, and then there's an underlying mystery that gets uncovered here. So there's so much to like here, and in all these movies, there's a ton of like like you said, great shot selection, the set designs, and some of these are outstanding. Some more than others, but some of these really have amazing set designs. The music is usually performed by Goblin,
Mm-hmm.
who I think we're both fans of now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Goblin soundtrack is outstanding in all these movies. The colors and the color grading and the use of like bright colored lights and things like that is really unique and cool. But there's this one thing that I can't speak for all of them because I didn't watch some of the ones you did. But there's this one common thread where there's just terrible ADR in all of these. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the dubbing, and I guess just some of it has to be that people have really thick Italian accents and they're trying to hide that because the mouth movements don't match up. Some of it, I'm sure, is that they're shooting in loud locations or windy or there's water movement or whatever, and they're limited by the recording equipment at the time. But some of this ADR is one of the biggest things that took me out some of the time. Like it's just distracting sometimes, especially certain characters would have particularly egregious bad voiceover
Yeah,
dubbing.
I mean, I forgave it for that. I knew it was gonna be a thing because you had told me about it, so I kind of just it didn't bother me as much.
The more of these you watch, the more you're like, man, every one of these, huh? Even like 1987, he's still doing. I mean, that might be the worst offender is opera.
Really?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so he just did that forever. I wonder where it stops.
And it's strange too because the lead is usually like a native English speaker. It seems like,
Yeah,
and even them having the ADR is strange, but it's just part of his style, I guess. Maybe it's the Giallo style. I don't know.
well, I know that these movies were shot entirely silently, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's an Argento thing or if that was just the style of the time. And if that's it, I just thought I can't help but be distracted by it some of the time. And there are some things other than just that you've got to forgive here. Besides, like some of the visual effects being, some of the acting is a little, like not usually it's secondary characters, but there's some overacting going on here for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's all like part of a vibe and an aesthetic that I don't know. It's just like a little time capsule of a certain time in history. So yeah, you got to forgive it for some stuff. But
Since we both watched Deep Red, did you enjoy that one?
I did, yeah, for sure. I mean, the things that stand out to me make it a great movie. Uh, there are parts in all of these, but Deep Red's the freshest on my mind. But there are parts in all these movies where I feel like, maybe like some of the in between stuff isn't super compelling, like captivating the whole way through. Like
Right.
there's some dialogue stuff that gets a little, you're kind of like, yeah, 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 yeah. But can we get to the cool stuff? Because I know it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like you're kind of warned by the music. Like things will be normal, and then like the music picks up the pace, and you're like, okay. And especially in Deep Red, it's kind of funny because it's like it's kind of jarring at first because the music is so upbeat, like danceable, like it's a fun time,
Yeah, it's
and
like
we're
almost
like to watch somebody get murdered.
it's almost like it fit more in like well, I guess this is kind of like a detective mystery thing, but it felt more like it should be like a scene where somebody's chasing somebody rather than somebody snooping through a house or something. But like that said, I did like the music a lot in that movie and the other ones. There were a couple interesting things that were unique to Deep Red that I'm gonna see if you caught on.
Okay.
So there's like a scene where they're in the plaza. It's Carlo and our main character, and like the diner behind them. That reminds you of like anything in particular?
The one of my favorite paintings of all time,
There you
and I
go.
don't know if it's directly a reference to that, but I was thinking that at the time. Yeah, Nighthawks.
Yeah,
What's
Norman
his name?
Rockwell.
No, it's
No,
Hopper.
Hopper. There's also a weird thing, like, so everybody in the background, for the most part, in multiple scenes, were just, like, standing there, not doing anything, like, not moving. There's, like, a scene where there's a long hallway, and there's, like, 3 or 4 women in the background, and they're literally just standing there. And it was
Maybe it's
really...
for the creepy vibes, you know?
Maybe, because, I mean, even when they were in that diner, the only person moving was somebody reading a paper. There's just a guy, like, leaned up against it, a girl standing down there. It was interesting. I don't know.
You know, somehow I actually didn't notice that, but and I will say, you know, as old as these movies are now, like sometimes they are genuinely very creepy. Like even where not a whole lot's going on, like just the vibes of an empty old abandoned place or something like that. You know that it can still be effectively creepy for sure. Another thing about Deep Red, by the way, I thought of this a couple times watching opera, which I'll get into. But so there's things with opera too that are like this. But watching that robot doll walk in the house, which was like the most unexpected thing in the whole movie for sure. But watching that robot doll walk in the house, I was like, man, I've been getting some Saw vibes. But now I'm starting to think I know where the doll came from. Yeah. And then I read a Wikipedia page about either Dario Argento or I read a Wikipedia page about something, and Lee Winnell was inspired by Dario Argento's movies to make the Saw movies, and the direct inspiration for the doll in the Saw movies is that.
That makes sense. It was
so there you go.
Creepy scene, yeah.
But you can see where I felt like every one of these that I watched, I could pick up. It's not like Saw and this are the same kind of movie. Yeah. But this had to exist for Saw to one day exist. I think.
And it seems like he references his own movies throughout all of these movies as well.
Well, Tenebrae, I think, is a direct movie about him. Like it's an allegory for him as a filmmaker, because this author is writing horror, like murder mystery novels, and inspire, and like this guy's saying he's inspiring me to kill people.
Yeah.
And I think that was Dario Argento's response to critics of his saying, like, making movies like this is going to inspire people to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like the scene in Deep Red a lot with the drowning in the tub. I thought like the special effects there were good and pretty effective. Yeah. We come back and see her after she's died, and it actually looks worse that second time. And I was like, oh well, should have just left it how it was. But whatever. We might as well talk about Suspiria.
Yeah, I mean that
was my favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I think how we're talking about one person might like the magical ones and the mystery ones. I think I liked the mystery ones better than I did the magical Mysteria and Inferno. Like I did Suspiria was good, but I think Deep Red might have been my favorite one. And it was the first one I watched. I don't know.
Suspiria for me, I think the lead was really good.
Yeah.
I think that had one of the strongest leads actually, and I liked that occult angle of all of it. Like it's like, you know, I think this is the easiest one to spoil because I think everybody's seen this movie before we did. But like, it's basically a dance academy that was founded by a witch, and it still is a coven, and she's still alive, like necrotic, you know, 1,000 years old or whatever. Mm-hmm. Not 1,000 years old, but I think I like that angle better. And I didn't see Phenomena, and I hear that one, like that was kind of one of his more panned movies, you know. So I don't know if that's one to watch or skip. But yeah, I liked that angle, and I liked especially in that one the use of like color, like I was talking about, and the lighting and everything. And it's kind of interesting because I guess it's just a stylistic choice as far as I couldn't tell if they were trying to represent darkness or something, because it's like they'd be like, all right, night, you know, like when they set up the area for them all to sleep, and they're like, all right, night girls, we're going to hit the lights. And then the lights turn off and immediately red lights are all lit all around the thing. And I'm thinking like, that can't be, I mean, that wouldn't be, that's supposed to be a visual representation of darkness just so the shadows are really stark or,
yeah,
you know, but I like the choice.
Yeah, I think it was like a big contrast to color because that's one thing I wanted to talk about was because it was in Inferno as well. There's lots of like heavy red lighting, heavy blue lighting. There's more green lighting in Suspiria. I don't think there was really in Inferno, but it's very like obvious and like there for some type of reason.
Well, and it makes it. I think it's interesting because it makes it so that in my mind, the movie Suspiria will forever be like this particular shade of red.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like the reddest movie I've ever seen. But yeah, and then like there's other scenes like you said with the green light where they'll turn off the light in the room and green light replaces it and stuff. By the way, just I'm thinking about this one particular scene where the green light happens, but like her roommate or her friend Sarah, all throughout, or not all throughout, but she befriends this girl Sarah. The way that girl talks in like a chronic whisper, and also with the extra bad like ADR, like I guess she maybe had a really thick accent or something like that, but that whispering was really getting on my nerves. And like the way she described the headmistress sleeping outside of on the other side of the sheet and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, the way you talk is just like infuriating to me. But I still like the movie in spite of that. But I'd be interested to see what the remake is like.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it really, but I'd be interested to see, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an interesting... I don't know if this is a fact, but like I was just wondering what Suspiria meant. And basically, I think it means like it's just like a sigh or an exhaling of breath in Spanish.
Right, a sigh,
or
yeah.
Italian. And I'm guessing that's like how... Because the house mother, or like the founder of the school or whatever, the witch, is like wheezy snoring, and they like point that out. So I'm guessing that's kind of like what that came from,
like
maybe.
Whistle snore, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other one that you watched that I did? Oh, Inferno.
Inferno, yeah. Pretty...
So kind of a lesser, maybe your least favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar to Suspiria in a way where it's like, there's a guy in Rome, there's a guy and his sister in New York, and people kind of start dying, and he goes to see her in New York. And by the way, she's missing when he gets there, and not a big thing. He just doesn't seem that worried about why she's missing or that she could be dead. But, there's people dying in this building that she was living in. Turns out kind of the same thing where like there's these hidden rooms in this building, and he finds a witch and she dies, and it ends the same way as Suspiria. The building's on fire. I know he was making a trilogy of them, but it seemed like this was kind of just basically the same movie with a different witch.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of these movies, I don't know about Inferno specifically, but it seems like a lot of these movies end really abruptly. Like at the end of Suspiria, she just walks out of the burning building and kind of smiles, and they're like, thanks, you've been watching Suspiria. See you later.
That's kind of how Inferno is. I do have one like kind of big complaint with Inferno is like there was definitely animal abuse on this movie.
Oh.
Because there were some cats, and there's this scene where this girl falls over, and they literally have to just be throwing these cats at this girl's head because they're like fucking like landing on her and like freaking out and running away, and it just goes on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Multiple cats, and then there's another scene where this guy, the cats are fucking with his business and he hates it or whatever, and he just like grabs one by the back of the neck. It's like full grown cat. He's carrying it, and like you can tell the cat is like it's like making noises,
freaking out,
and it like starts going like this, and then he like throws it in a bag that cats are already in, and you can see they're not enjoying this because they're like in there fighting each other and hissing, and like closes it up. I'm just like, Jesus, like this is a little much, guys. Cool. Yeah.
Well, and the lizard in Deep Red.
Yeah.
There's like a lizard with a needle in it.
Yeah, there's definitely some animal abuse in these movies.
I forgot about there was a couple scenes that stood out to me in Suspiria. So that when the blind pianist gets attacked by his own dog, like I think that's probably really good for the time, but I couldn't help but watch it and picture like somebody with a dog hand puppet on going at this guy's neck.
Yeah.
And then like shots of the dog just eating a piece of meat. But it was like, you have to tell yourself, like, how much better could you do in 1977?
No, yeah, for the time,
you know,
this was probably like groundbreaking practical effects for what it was. For sure.
And then the other thing was, and again, this is like another like I'm kind of two minds about it. Like it's very dated what they did, but I thought this was actually one of the more effective things in any of these movies. But when she falls in the razor wire,
yeah.
For some reason, for me, that was just like shocking. Like I just couldn't believe they did that. I don't even know what the razor wire was there for or whatever, but that's just shocking. But the longer she rides around in it, the more you're like, okay. I mean, I'm looking at it; it's just wire.
Like, yeah.
So
maybe
the longer the longer you look at this, the more it's like, okay. I mean, it wouldn't really. You're actually fine. Just get out of the wire.
You just got to pretend that it's razor wire.
Yeah, and the only one we haven't talked about is Opera, and actually. I think it's one of the better ones here. It's like the worst offender with the dubbing thing, which I'm going to shut up about now, but the dubbing's bad. But it's one of the more interesting stories I thought here. It's just, it probably suffered from coming out like too late for this genre.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have some really iconic stuff, and the main iconic thing here is the cover, or the poster of the movie, which is this woman with like a row of needles taped underneath each eye.
Oh yeah.
So she can't close her eyes, and she has to like watch. She's forced multiple times by this person to watch horrible things happen to people she loves, all while like the play Macbeth is happening in the backdrop of this, and she just got selected to be the lead. For me, like some of the most iconic stuff of all the Argento movies that I just watched are here, because you've got a lot of like close-up shots of her looking terrified with the needles on her eyes, but you also got like outward from her looking shots where you're seeing like a blurred world with these sharply focused needles sticking up.
Ooh.
The only thing is, like, if you can't turn your brain off about it, the needle thing, just a piece of tape taping a row of needles to your eyes, I don't think any amount of blinking would actually hurt you at all.
We'll probably get 40 lashes.
Oh no!
Yeah, probably not, but
And it also shows, like, every time they show her eyes, the blood that they put on the needles is like completely, it's like different amounts of blood. Every shot is like a lot of blood, a little blood, no blood. It's in a different spot. It's only on one eye. It's like, it's ever changing. But yeah, some really great stuff there. And I can't remember if this is one that we've both seen or not. So remind me if this is a scene you've seen. But what movie is it where somebody gets shot through a peephole? Is that something you've seen?
I don't think so.
I want to say it's opera, so I'll say it's opera.
Probably opera, yeah.
But there's a scene where someone's outside saying that they're a police officer, and to let him in, and they're fooling her, and he shows a gun through the people. We're looking through the people, which is already kind of a cool shot anyway. We're looking through the people, but he shows the gun, and she's like, "I don't want to see your gun. I want to see your face," and then he just shoots her through the people, and the camera. I don't know how they did this at the time. Even, I mean, this is 80s, but I don't know how they did this. The camera goes through the people as the bullet is coming, like slow motion, out of the gun through the people and then through her head. And then it shows a side view of the bullet going through her head. And it looks like modern day special effects technology, whatever they did there. So they had to put some kind of explosive on the back of her head or something.
Yeah.
But that was really super effective. And that was one of those moments that took you out of like what time period the movie is you're watching. And you're like, oh man, that was just super effective in any movie, any time period. So that's the one I recommend you should check out. Actually,
Yeah.
if you ever dip your toe back into Argento, that's one that's worth watching.
Yeah,
and it has a lot of like metal music and opera. So there's like the opera music from Macbeth, and then it gets interrupted by metal whenever crazy stuff happens. So
that's cool.
Interesting.
I did want to mention also the theme for Suspiria is a very like sampled song in modern music as well. Like I think RJD2 has a song called Weather People, which is basically just that song with him putting some beats over it. I know Raekwon has like I think it's like a mixtape song that he does with Ghostface. And there's like a bunch of other people. It's very familiar song.
I thought all of these had some really iconic and sometimes even familiar sounding music in them, where I'm like wondering if I've heard sampling of that throughout my life that I didn't know what I was hearing. But like even Tenebrae, which I think was the weakest one for me, has some great music in it. And the main theme of Deep Red was great, but also the other main song in Deep Red that's like the children's song had a really creepy vibe to it too. So I thought that was cool. And when you watch the movies this old, you wonder like, was some of this like the first time somebody used innocent sounding children's music as a creepy element in a movie? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but it was 1975, so maybe,
Yeah, I mean, he did it in The Bird with Crystal Plumage as well. I don't think it was like the main theme, but there was definitely one in there that was like a child's creepy music. And that would have been the same.
Yeah, and you can just, this couldn't have existed without like Hitchcock and Psycho and stuff like that. But there's so many movies now, like I was saying, where I think they couldn't have existed without these movies. So
yeah,
it's interesting to talk about movies like this, where it's like I don't even feel like I can rate any of these or give them scores or whatever, because it's like it's different with this stuff. It's like it's of a particular time period. It was trying to do something in particular, and I think these all executed that really well. If I was gonna rate them, I don't know how much to take off for things like What are you gonna say?
Yeah.
I mean, things like the ADRing that bothered me throughout some of it.
I mean, I think they were all good for what they were, except I just didn't really care for Inferno. But
Inferno,
I enjoyed
yeah.
all of them for the most part.
And unfortunately, I've heard that this, he has continued to make movies, and I've heard the diminishing returns by far. Like nothing he's made in the last few years, I don't think has gotten any good reviews. So unfortunately, yeah, not making the best movies anymore. But this was an interesting little like snapshot of a particular time and place, and I feel like I just spent a week in Italy. You know what I mean? Like almost all these movies take place in Italy. Yeah, just some really iconic shots. I think that's what it's going to boil down to for me. Is there will be like scenes that I remember from each of these movies, and but I think I'll return to some of these for sure.
Yeah,
I would recommend.
I would like to watch some more of them.
Almost all these.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phenomena I definitely want to check out because I know it's like mixed reviews, but sometimes that ends up being something I love. So you never know. I know it's something to do with like controlling insects with their mind.
I mean, young Jennifer Connelly too. Should be interesting.
Yeah, one of her first acting roles, I believe. Anything else you wanted to add to all that? I know we could say more.
Yeah, I mean, the reason
that,
we kind of watched this in the first place was because there's a documentary coming out about him, so we'd have a little. It seemed like a pretty interesting one that we're gonna end up watching. I don't know if we're gonna talk about it or not, but it's kind of what got us into watching these movies.
February 2nd when it comes out directly to Shudder. So if you have Shudder, and also if you have Shudder, almost all these are on there. I think I had to go to Tubi for Suspiria, and I think
Inferno's on there too. So there's a bunch on there.
Crystal
Plumage, yeah, which isn't bad. I mean, it's a free service with not that many ads, honestly.
Actually, you could watch almost all these on Tubi if you didn't have Shudder. So without going on too long about it, if you like these kinds of videos, help us out by subscribing. We're trying to get to 500 subs, and hit like down below. And we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Hit us up in the comments. Any of these movies you've seen, want to talk about, or you can list them off. And we didn't want to list these off in order necessarily. First time watching all these, but if you want to rank these and you've seen more than us, certainly let us know about it. We'll catch you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.